So I want to talk about my new textbook. It's not only a textbook, it can be read by anyone interested in environmental and urban economics. I intentionally am selling it very low, cheap price, $2 a book on Amazon Kindle. I'm trying to compete with $100 textbooks, and I'm trying to sell a book that I think has a heck of a lot of good. So the book has some of the traditional stuff on externalities and on public goods provision. But what's distinctive about the book is that I've packed in a lot of stories and insights from my 20 years as an environmental and urban economist. And I think another neat feature of the book is to be realistic about government's strengths and weaknesses, documenting and discussing intended and unintended consequences of government. There's some smart sections in the book about how to use simple statistics for evaluating whether government has improved air quality, how to use data to test for causal effects. There's also some good microeconomics in the book about the incentives of firms. When they face regulation, when will they move to a country, a poor country, which might have laxer regulation? When is the pollution haven hypothesis, which posits that dirty factories will run away from regulated areas and follow the path of least resistance? When does that story actually hold? The book is also strong at integrating statistics with environmental economics for how to think about data and how PhD economists actually test hypotheses. The middle section of the book switches over to the demand side. So chapters 5 and 6 talks about how people choose where to live across and within cities, and also discusses some interesting cases of how we measured the demand for urban environmental progress. Chapters 7 and 8 in this 16-chapter book talk about classic urban externalities associated with driving and associated just with population density. There's that old joke, the solution to pollution is dilution, that there's benefits of suburbanization and that you're exposed to less pollution. But of course, there is also social cause. The back end of the book does some things which other environmental textbooks don't do. In chapter 9, I explicitly talk about Berkeley, a town filled with solar panels and Priuses, and people walking the walk in terms of being environmentalists. And I discuss the simple question, where do environmentalist preferences come from? Chapter 10 is at the intersection of economics and sustainable business, studying the economics of green business. When a company like Ben & Jerry's, who makes ice cream, embraces the green agenda, there's two questions: why it embraces the green agenda and how does it gain? Is it costly to go green, or is this part of a marketing strategy or a strategy of retaining good workers, attracting venture capital? Chapters 11 and 12 revisit the global externality challenge of climate change, with a focus on why, as in capitalism, when we don't have a price on carbon, when you allow the externality to fester, why there is so much greenhouse gas production. And with China and India growing, it's likely to be the case that the externality will grow worse. Chapter 12 focuses on California and its path-breaking AB 32, and it asks, why isn't California a free rider? And I talk about why I live in California. At the end of the book, I revisit some old stuff and some new stuff. So chapter 13 does a good job on natural resource economics, contrasting sort of the Julian Simon optimism about our future with sort of the doom and gloom of the Paul Ehrlichs and Jared Diamonds of the world, the concern that we're going to collapse and run out of natural resources. Economists scoff at that, but it's important to have this discussion. At the back end of the book, I talk about future environmental challenges, which of course focuses on adaptation to climate change, and I revisit some of the themes from my Climatopolis book. Chapter 15 talks about the environmental Kuznets curve and the macro relationship between economic growth and the environment. And then at the very back end of the book, I present for the reader sort of extra credit readings, and I hyperlink some of my relevant papers for readers who want to see more and just be one click away in Amazon. And then for students For older students, if you're 40 years old and wish you were at UCLA right now, I post some of my recent final exams so you can see how you do relative to the new cohort of UCLA students. And so I'm packing a fair bit of ideas into a $2 book. I hope you take a look at it.